All right, folks, welcome back once again to another episode of the Contrarians. This is a show in our series called Build a Bad Album. So this is going to be called the Contrarians Presents Build a Bad Album, episode 11, Led Zeppelin. And we're going to call this record, what are we going to call it, Marco? Do you like Houses of the Moldy or do you like Out Through the Back Door? I don't know.
I kind of like, they're both pretty good. I kind of like Out Through the Back Door.
Okay, excellent. So that's what we're going to call this thing. So yeah, what we do with these episodes is just poking a bit of fun at some bands that we like, and essentially, we're figuring out, all these bands put all these compilations all the time, but nobody's brave enough to put out the worst of, right? So I think I think there's a greatest hits album out there called The Least Worst Of, and long story. I actually did an episode of my podcast where we went through funny titles of greatest hits albums. But yeah, nobody actually goes and does a worst of album. So we've gone and done it. You can see our recent one on Black Sabbath. We did that, and like I say, we're up to 11 episodes here. So that's the deal. We go back to the vinyl era. We pick 5 tracks each, and give you kind of the worst of a band. And it's kind of all in fun, and obviously we usually end up in these episodes talking more about how much we love these bands and most of their material. But yeah, I'll turn it over to Marco, and Marco's going to give us his side one. Take it away.
All right, so we're going with Led Zeppelin, which obviously they're a phenomenal band, and their songwriting and performing and instrumentation is way better than anything that I could ever do. I'm just coming from a perspective of I'm a fan of this band, and I'm trying to pick my least favorite songs. So that as some of these songs aren't, have redeemable qualities, but I'm just going with what I would put on a playlist of songs that were my least favorite of Led Zeppelin. So the first song I'm going with is The Crunge. It starts off not bad. Unfortunately, it goes downhill. It's pretty fond of Plant's vocals, but here his voice sounds uncomfortable, and his voice even cracks at one point. They don't even bother to fix it. And it has that terrible ending. Like, I think some people find that whole "Where's the Bridge" thing a little humorous. I kind of find it a little annoying, and I don't really like how it ends with that. Where's the bridge? Where's that bridge? It kind of makes me cringe a little bit when I hear this song. And interestingly enough, I did a little bit of research. This one comes up as number 8 on Louder Sound's worst Led Zeppelin tunes. This one also was suggested by one of our patrons. It might be one of the most annoying songs on my side, I think. Vulture called it easily the least interesting song of Zeppelin's classic period, and it was ranked in the bottom 10 of their worst Led Zeppelin songs. So that's The Crunge. Number 2, easy pick, Hot Dog. It's a far stretch from that, like the early, cool, heavy Zeppelin tunes like most folks are used to. It doesn't have a speck of grit anywhere. This one's also suggested on Patreon as one of the worst Zeppelin tunes. It's kind of like a hoedown. Like, I don't even know what to say about this one. This one's from In Through the Outdoor, right? Probably my least favorite song on maybe my least favorite Zeppelin album. The next one, Candy Store Rock. This one's from Presence. Candy Store Rock, although not necessarily a bad tune to me, it quickly becomes repetitive, I think. Louder Sound calls it a weak song off their weakest album. His attempt to add some rockabilly-flavored vocals to an aimless riff doesn't lift the track out of the ordinary. So that's my third pick, is Candy Store Rock. My next track comes off an early Led Zeppelin album. This one's Hats Off to Roy Harper. This one comes off of Led Zeppelin 3. This is number 2 on Louder Sound's worst Led Zeppelin songs. It's a pretty unremarkable blues tune. According to Setlist FM, it was never played by the band live, which is interesting because it comes from an early album. It's ranked number 4 in Vulture's worst ranking of every Led Zeppelin song. So that's pretty low on that list. They call it a mess of blues. To me, it is kind of like it has like a Delta blues kind of feeling to it. I can't even understand what most of the vocals are. There's a lot of issues with it. I feel like the recording could have been better, I think. And even the title, Hats Off to Roy Harper, I feel like that's the one that would probably bother you because it has just like a random bracket in there, Roy's in brackets for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't understand why that's like that.
Yeah.
And then for my last track, not maybe necessarily the worst track, it was hard for me kind of picking worst Led Zeppelin tunes. I picked Southbound Suarez. I don't think it's probably my least unfavorite, or I guess my favorite out of the 5 tracks that I picked. And I kind of was looking for that, what's that fifth thing I could have picked, to put on here. So it was kind of falls into that category. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard, but I do also find that it probably, it doesn't sound like it's covering any new ground in the Zeppelin catalog. I feel like it's not anything that I would go out of my way to listen to, I guess. Vulture ranked this one in the bottom half of their worst Led Zeppelin songs rating list. Called it a labored throwaway from the final album with a particularly screechy solo from Page, and they called that a puzzlement. So those are my 5 tunes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll just kind of comment quickly. I mean, I never really had much problem with the grunge. The other one that history is always looked at on that album is Jamaica, right? Their attempt at reggae. So that one always gets a little bit of abuse too. But yeah, granted, these two always do. Hot Dog, I definitely totally agree with. And something that always bothered me about that one, I feel like Jimmy's playing on it is not very smooth, right? When he does that fast lick, it seems like there's a little bit of a stutter in there, right? So that always kind of bothered me as well. But yeah, I totally agree that it's kind of just a throwaway, old rock and roll tune. Candy Store Rock, I agree with that as well. That one always kind of bothered me. It's kind of interesting that it's got kind of this cool, jumpy, nervy beat to it, I suppose. And hats off to Roy Harper. Yeah, it does bother me having that parentheses in there. I guess they didn't think people knew who Roy Harper was, and they wanted to say, oh, it's actually Roy Harper. That's who we're talking about here, sort of thing. And Southbound Suarez, I've always liked. I'm fine with that one. Okay, my side 2. I'm going with to start with. I'm going to go with Led Zeppelin 1's Your Time Is Gonna Come. I've always thought this song. I just went on and did a cool podcast on a Zepp podcast, and he asked me that question: what is your least favorite Zeppelin song? And I've never really thought about it, so that's cool. It got me thinking, and this is the one I came up with. I always thought it was kind of the song on here that, besides, blues obviously has this big long history, but it's the one on here that I think sounds a little bit 60s rock. And I never liked that about it. It sounds a little bit San Francisco, psych to me. So it always sounded kind of dated, and I didn't like it in terms of it being, it's not bluesy, it's not heavy, it's just this weird poppy space in between. And then I went with the Lemon Song from Led Zeppelin 2, because I really don't like these slow, stodgy, bluesy things that they do. And I don't like that ascending, descending sort of riff thing. It's just depressing to me. I don't even want to hear Zeppelin really do blues so much. I like it. I love the folky Zeppelin and the forward thinking heavy Zeppelin and all the coolest experiments. So my least favorite category is them either ripping on old blues songs or writing a blues song. So that one just always bothered me. It's just noisy and clumsy and slow kind of thing. Then I went with Since I've Been Loving You, which is, there's some beautiful playing in that, and I love what Bonham does in it, but it's one of the closest things they have to actually writing their own sort of slow blues. And so yeah, I'm just not a fan of that sort of music from this band. So that's, yeah. And it kind of really bothers me that it is breaking up one of my favorite sides of Led Zeppelin on here. Immigrant Song, Friends, Celebration Day, Out on the Tiles. Like that's basically, besides how much I love Physical Graffiti, that's a side that stands up to Physical Graffiti. And I suppose because I love that side so much, it's almost okay to have that blues song in there, because it just creates, a lot of contrast, I suppose. But no, I'm going to go with that. Then I'm going to go with For Your Life from Presence. Yeah, I've always had it kind of in for this album. You know, you guys know that we did a Contrarians worst album episode. You can go see, and we talked about Presence. But it's just that slow kind of. It's kind of a neat pocket, but it's just kind of this chordy one. Doesn't sound particularly heavy. Doesn't sound particularly new. That's the thing that bothers me about this album is that it sounds like they're slipping. They're slipping compared to the competition, specifically more so Aerosmith Rocks that comes out in 1976. When I compare those two albums, a black album and a white album, and actually black album and a white album that both have something in a square in the middle or, you know, rectangle in the middle, kind of interesting. But they just seem like night and day. Like Aerosmith is like taking over from Zeppelin at that point. And so I find this kind of like lazy and just not a well-written song. And then I'm going to go with Hot's On for Nowhere, also from the same album with the na, 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 you know, that thing. It's kind of funky and mid-paced and I don't find the groove particularly good that Bonham does on this. Again, I think it's something Aerosmith does better. It's kind of an Aerosmithy song, but it's just sort of clunky. And it sounds a little tossed off and not that well written as well. So yeah, so I've got two from Presence on here, and then you know it's pretty predictable the rest of it. Love Zeppelin to death. I actually looked all over Physical Graffiti. I couldn't find anything to put on here from that double album. There was nothing even close. But there you go. That's my side too.
Yeah, good picks. Let's go through some of yours. The Lemon song I quite like. It's pretty heavy. See, that's Zeppelin doing blues. Like I prefer that over Hats Off to Roy Harper because I feel like that's more like a Zeppelin way to do blues, I guess, where Hats Off to Roy Harper is more a generic way to do blues, I guess. Although the vocal is really weird on Hats Off to Roy Harper. But you have some interesting picks on your side there. A couple from Presence. Hot's On for Nowhere, I would totally agree with for sure. Your Time Is Going to Come is one I don't necessarily have a problem with. Since I've Been Loving You is another one I don't really have that big of a problem with. But yeah, for sure. For Your Life, For Your Life kind of has a cool riff, but you're right. Like it's, again, not super interesting, kind of unremarkable. And then Hot's On for Nowhere is probably my least favorite on your side. Mm-hmm. And I've actually done a little bit of research on your songs too. Okay. So looking at the research here, Your Time Is Going to Come. So Vulture did a worst ranking of every Led Zeppelin song. Your Time Is Going to Come is in the bottom 10. So it's like at the very bottom of the worst list. So is the Lemon song, okay, which is interesting. Since I've Been Loving You is in the bottom 15. Okay. And I think there's about 78 or 80 something Led Zeppelin songs. Okay. For Your Life, bottom 10. So you're really getting the bottom of the barrel here of their list. Yeah. And it was number 10 on Louder Sound's 10 worst Zeppelin songs. So it's in the bottom 10 of both. Okay. And they said this tune never catches up with the riff and ambles along looking for a hook. Mediocre. That's what they said about that one. And then Hot's On for Nowhere, according to Vulture, is the third worst Led Zeppelin song of every Led Zeppelin song ranked. And number 7 on Louder Sound's worst Zeppelin songs. And they say 4 minutes and 44 seconds, but it feels an awful lot longer. Okay. In terms of our poll, so our A-side single for the worst of Zeppelin tunes is Hats Off to Roy Harper. Okay. That had the most votes. Wow. And our B-side would be The Crunch. Okay. And then some of the comments that we got. Don says, Hats Off to Roy Harper is an utterly ridiculous song. No redeeming qualities at all. Hot Dog is a close second. Peter Jones says, Since I've Been Loving You, the Lemon song, Hots for Nowhere, Candy Store Rock, never in a million years on any worst list in my world, but just my opinion. Hot Dog is the weakest track on this list. David says, Southbound Suarez is my pick, even though it isn't a punishing listen at all. Hot Dog grew on me after a few years of skips. I'm guessing I enjoy it most for the rare moment of silliness. And I'm partially shocked at how Hats Off to Roy Harper is getting recognized here. I championed this psychedelic word folk sound, and I love Zeppelin 3, but I understand how many Zeppelin heads rank it low because when I initially heard the album, it was a bore. Took a good decade until it ascended to masterpiece status. So those are the comments, and our single is Hats Off to Roy Harper, and the B-side is The Crunch.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, so there you go. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Of course, like and subscribe and all that stuff. Let us know what we missed. Would you buy this record? Of course, we've got a whole Patreon situation, which Marco's done a great job in setting up panels and music trivia night and all that stuff. Some of our favorite stuff to do is when we get together with the Patreons and we do those dark horse panels where, you know, we just attack one album, you know, 5-6 people, go for an hour usually, kind of thing, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, you can join our Patreon situation if you want to get involved in that stuff. And yeah, for your homework, go listen to some of these terrible Led Zeppelin songs. Apparently they're terrible, and let us know what you think. Bye for now.